Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We are excited to deliver some great information to you all. And I want to start off today's presentation by saying, I spend a lot of time talking with SurveyCTO users because as a team, we love learning about all the things that you all are doing, what you're all working on. And almost always, we have this deep admiration for your collective skills. But there are also times when I have an admiration for your generosity. My conversations with our speakers today were an example of that. Today's topic was born out of their experiences at the NGO they work at Suvita. And as you all are likely aware, this space, the nonprofit space, is one where you are fairly time and resource constrained, and Suvita is no exception. They overcame their challenges. They found resources to help them along the way, yes. But out of that experience, they realized that they wanted to share what they learned along the way and the resources that they also created so that other organizations who are also looking for the same things, asking the same questions, could find what they need a little easier and, didn't have to build a solution from scratch if they needed something. So that is what we will be spending our time together today talking about, and I hope you all take away some useful tidbits. As always, let me start by formally introducing our speakers. Firstly, we have Suvita Saxena, who is Suvita's head of technology. She leads the team and works with them to design and develop new ways to use technology to achieve and really surpass Suvita's program goals. Next, we have Vinod Raj, the senior technology generalist at Suvita. He helps build digital systems that revolve around data infrastructure, workflow automations, integrations, and that's really in order to help improve the delivery of Suvita's programs. And lastly, my name is Shirley Sweeney. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing at SurveyCTO, and I'll be your moderator for today. First, we'll start with a brief overview about what Suvita as an organization does, some context setting about the landscape of resources and technology in the nonprofit space, the data collection system that Suvita has built so you can kind of visualize the end result before we then dive into the main challenges that they encountered before they got to their current solutions. And of course, we will have demos to accompany those sections. And with that, I will hand it off to Suvita to start.
Thank you, Shirley. I'm very excited to be presenting this webinar. So before we go into technical details, I want to talk a little about Suvita and what we do. So at Suvita, we are trying to fill the immunization gap. India has made tremendous progress over the years, but during our need assessment study last year, we found that still there are about 6 million under-vaccinated children in India. What that means is every year, somewhere around 73,000 children die from vaccine-preventable diseases. So that's the scale of problem. That is what we are trying to solve at Suvita. So right till now, how we do it at Suvita is via two programs. We have two interventions. One is we work with the state governments and with the community members to create a community of influencers. Like you have influencers, digital media influencers. Similarly, we are trying to create influencers within villages. So as these influencers talk about vaccination, the need for vaccination, we hope that there'll be a behavioral change and it will nudge more and more caregivers to get their child vaccinated. And on top of that, we send personalized behavior science packed messages, SMSs, to each caregiver. So suppose a caregiver's child is due for vaccination. So just before 7 days, we send a message reminding them of which vaccine they need to get and at what date. So then at least the information barrier, the main information barrier that we found, which was caregivers sometimes forget to get their child, when is the due date? Sometimes they forget that. So we are trying to fill that gap with both our programs. So here we wanted to just cover the scale of what it means. Till now, we have sent messages to about 6.8 million caregivers, as well as 4.4 million pregnant women. That's roughly about 10 million people we have in our systems. We've sent about 100 million messages, and we have a network of 15,000 ambassadors. So you can imagine the scale and the complexity of the technology that goes behind it. And SurveyCTO has been central in helping us achieve all of these, the data flow between the systems. Before we go ahead, I wanted to establish what was the need, why we decided to go ahead with this webinar. So when we were designing systems for Suvita, we realized that some of the stuff is very common to most of the NGOs. Most NGOs need a robust and scalable data system as well as reporting. And then we realized that there is a gap. So many NGOs are working in isolation, and the technical documentation and the sharing of resources is not happening as it should. So then we thought maybe, we got help from different NGOs. So one of our use case, I'll explain later, for one of our use case, we used JPAL open source technology. And I would really like to thank and acknowledge JPAL here. If not for JPAL, we would have spent at least 2-3 weeks more to create that framework. So with the help of JPAL, we could easily fork and create our own plugin, and we did not have to reinvent the wheel. So we want to pay it forward, and we want to share our resources, the work we have done with SurveyCTO with others. So those are the two things that I would like to do with this webinar. So this is in brief about Suvita's data ecosystem. So we have, as I told you, we have two programs. One is where we send personalized reminders, and another is where we have ambassadors. So for our data collection system, to send SMSs, we need data. We need details of the children who were born. So for that, what we have is we manually collect digital birth records from the hospitals. So we have data collection officers who go to the hospitals and click pictures of the birth registers. Then in office, so these data collection officers, they go to remote villages, to healthcare centers to take pictures. And now we have data entry officers who sit in the office to digitize data from that pictures. So there was a gap, there was a need for that data, when it is clicked, for the data to appear in the data entry systems. And similarly, for our ambassador program, we do a lot of ambassador surveys. We do surveys where we call up people. So there was a need for us to have a survey platform. And then once survey is done, this data should go into our database, and we should be able to start messaging the people. So this is where the SurveyCTO tool really fits in for both our programs. We use SurveyCTO to collect the data from the hospitals. Then the data goes to our database. From there, it is directly picked up by the data entry system. SurveyCTO has helped us automate the whole system end to end without any manual intervention. Similarly, we've used a lot of SurveyCTO plugins, different kinds of plugins in the ambassador program. While we are doing the surveys, we have integrated those plugins wherein with a click of a button, say we are able to send the contact details. As soon as people are ambassadors, they agree to become our ambassadors with a click of a button, we are able to add them to our messaging systems. So today we are going to be demoing two systems to you. One is where we have used webhooks to flow for the data flow between data collection and the data entry, and another is how we have integrated SurveyCTO and Telervit. But for us, when we were designing the system, we realized that as soon as pictures are clicked, we wanted those pictures to appear in our data entry system within near real time. Otherwise, we'll have to poll the system every time, and the data collection schedules were not fixed. Because of rains, because of some external environment, we weren't sure at what times the data collection officers, they would go on bikes. So they would go and reach the PSC, at what time would they be able to actually get hold of the registers and took the pictures. So then for us, either it meant that we are always polling the SurveyCTO system. That meant that we'll have to face this the rate limits. SurveyCTO has a rate limit for a 5-minute wait time, or we are constantly also overusing, overloading the system. So then we started researching and we found something called Webhook. Webhook worked out really great for our system. In the SurveyCTO webhook, what we need to do is we can just tell the server that as soon as a form is published, all the data, as soon as there's a submission for any kind of form, it is sent to some kind of web API. So then it bypasses the polling templates, and then we don't have to poll the system again and again. Anytime there's a data collection app is happening between, say, 2 days, 3 days gap, 3 hours gap, anytime there's a data collection happening, SurveyCTO takes care of pushing the system, and that is near real time. So now what I'll also do is I'll show you a demo of how easy it is to set up a webhook and then use it. So you all must have seen this SurveyCTO interface. We have different options here. I think we use export quite, we don't use export quite often. So I'll probably explain how we can set up webhook here. If you go to a SurveyCTO export option, there are multiple options. One option is we can directly export the data to a Google Sheet. If you go down, there's an advanced option of publishing the form and data set to a cloud. So what we did is we created a webhook. Webhook is nothing but you're telling SurveyCTO that if there's a survey submission happens, then you send data to one REST API. So I'll show you how to add a webhook. So I can just click on for any form. So this is my pre-created form for data collection. And then if I go to a form I've just clicked on new webhook, and I can give it any name I want. Then I can add a URL. /Suvita /webhook, any URL any REST API that I can set up at my end. The data that would be sent from the SurveyCTO server would be in the form of JSON, which can be received by the webhook URL. And then I can select which fields I want to publish. I can select one of the field or few of the fields as per the requirements. All this data, as soon as it is published, it will be sent to the REST API, which can trigger further the workflow. I also have an option to publish the existing data and then save. That's it. It is as simple as that. I'll probably show you, let me show you a quick demo. This is our web collection form, and I'll do a false data collection for all of you here, just to show you how quickly it appears in our data entry system. So this is our data collection form, which our surveyors used. Mainly they use this on mobile. I'm using it on web. I will stop sharing my screen because this form would require picture collection. So I'll just stop sharing my screen for some time. So I'll just select name of any of the surveyor for now for the purpose of this demo. And I'll go next. I'll just select any of the district. I'm just selecting any random district. Basically, the solution, this data collection system we're using in the state of Bihar, where the immunization rates are lowest in the country. So you see, SurveyCTO also allows us to record location, which is another nice feature in the SurveyCTO forms. And here I can just enter any number. So now that I don't have a real register picture, I'll probably take a picture of my notebook and see if it appears in the data collection system. I'll complete this form. I've just selected the health center. So what we have also done is we have asked data collection officers to fill in the information of where they're going. This information also is shared by SurveyCTO in the webhook along with the picture. as you can see, I've submitted this form here, and then I will log in to the data entry collection system. So this is a data entry system that we created in-house, and this is linked with SurveyCTO. So what happens is, as soon as data collection officers, they take pictures and they submit, it goes to the webhook, SurveyCTO webhook. It calls a REST API and it sends all the data via a JSON. Then at the backend, the REST API processes the JSONs, applies validation, and then adds the data to our database. And from the database, it is added to our data entry system. I'll just open the data entries, see if there are any data entries that are assigned to me. Okay. So as you can see, I just took this picture, and this picture has been added to the data entry system in near real time. It took like few seconds, not even few seconds, for data to appear. And now our whole process end to end is automated. Okay, so this is, so we have for our REST APIs and for the webhook, we have created a public resource. We have created an open source library where you will have details of how to write a REST API, as well as more detailed documentation on how to add webhook. If you want to add security, how can you add more security, logging, and all those details you can find here. I'll share the link to the webinar. So that was one of the workflow wherein SurveyCTO nearly helped us automate the whole system. Now for our ambassador program, also we were looking for something. So for our ambassador program, we realized that once we've done the survey, once people say yes to becoming our ambassadors, after that it was taking a lot of time. Then somebody had to manually download the data, then add it to Telerevit. It would take sometimes weeks to manually do it, and then it would be like, how often should we do it? Should we do it daily? Should we do it weekly? So then we came across the JPAL plugin, and then we decided to tweak it to create our own plugin to connect the two systems, which is Telerevit and SurveyCTO. I'll hand over to Vinod to give demo of the system.
Thank you, Shweta. Hello, everyone. I'm Vinod. I'll briefly be talking about field plugins. As Shweta already touched upon, field plugin that we were using from JPAL. I'll briefly explain what field plugins are, how to build them in case if you're interested, and mostly how to use them, and probably most about how to use plugins that we have built and out. So one of the use cases that Shweta was just talking about is that Webhook basically pushes all data that comes into SurveyCTO. Whereas if you have a filtering requirement, so that you only want a part of data to be moved to the next system, then that would mean we'll have to filter it at some point. That's where we thought, okay, field plugin might be helpful. I'll briefly walk you through how this works. Shirley, can I start sharing your screen? So this is the plugin that Shweta was talking about. JPAL was gracious enough to make this open source. So this is where we started. So as Shweta earlier touched upon our immunization ambassador program. So these ambassadors were being recruited remotely by Suvita, and to call them up, to recruit them, we basically, the survey officers have to talk to them, right? And to call them up, we started using this plugin from JPAL, which would basically enable us to call via third-party solution called Exeter. So this will become a field inside the SurveyCTO form itself, where they just click a button, a call is connected, and they can talk to the beneficiary. So our predecessors started using this already by the time we started looking into this, and then we realized probably we want a bit more features other than what this was already supporting. So what we did was, you might see a PR here, which I raised, probably something for you to look at later. So we forked that plugin and then started looking into it deeper, saying how exactly does it work? Is there something that we can tweak or make it so that it suits our requirement? So that is when we realized that a plugin is just a 4-file document. So in a very basic sense, it's a web app. There is HTML and CSS. HTML decides the structure, CSS decides the style sheet. I'm briefly explaining these files. If you're interested, it's fine, but I'll just explain how it works and we'll move on to how to actually use it. And JS is a JavaScript file that determines the logic that goes into it. So we realized that is exactly it. SurveyCTO basically lets you embed a web app inside the form itself for you to do whatever you want. And we exit a plugin to fit our requirement, JPal's requirement, which is when it occurred to us that we could be using this as a method to move data in different ways to different systems. And we started building multiple plugins to help us build this requirement. So there is also a GitHub page which SurveyCTO maintains that also have resources for anyone interested in building a field plugin. But for the ones, I mean, everyone wouldn't want to build a field plugin, right? But for us to use it directly, there are lots of open source field plugins available already. So as I saying, I mean, all of us wouldn't want to build a SurveyCTO plugin, right? And also we don't have to because there are a lot of open source SurveyCTO plugins that are already available. This is one such repository. This is SurveyCTO's own repository, a GitHub profile, which holds 62 different repositories. That is basically 62 different field plugins we can use. It has, as I was showing, that video plugin. You can place local video. And I also found something interesting just a minute with LLM conversation. Someone has built a plugin where you could let your survey officers talk to an LLM inside the form itself. So in the similar way, we also decided to outsource all our plugins. So this is our repository, which will be shared by the end of this webinar, which holds all of the different things that we have built. It also has uh, the webhook that Shweta was just presenting. Today, I'll be taking you through this specific plugin. The point is, I'll show you how to use this open source plugin in the form and also demo how exactly it works inside a SurveyCTO. So this is a plugin that we built. Idea was that for the same program, the Immunization Ambassador program, we wanted to move our ambassadors from SurveyCTO to Telerevert. Telerevert is our communication platform, which basically sends out SMS and WhatsApp. We wanted to move immunization ambassadors, only the ones who had consented to be immunization ambassador to that platform. Now, Webhook could send everyone. So we wanted to have that filter there, which is when we thought, okay, let's build a plugin that will do that for us. So basically, if you want to use this plugin, what you do is any plugin you find in any of these repositories will have two things that are very important. One is to download it. Basically, you will usually find a download button. If you don't find a download button, you'll find a zip file here. So this is how a field plugin looks. It will always be a zip file, and there will be a suffix saying field plugin. So this is the easiest way of finding a field plugin. And the way you attach it is if you use XLS file to design your SurveyCTO form, you first decide what type to select for your field plugin. The way you do it is basically if you open the field plugin inside the manifest.json, you'll find this line which basically says what is its supported field type. Certain certain plugins support multiple field types, but it is mostly text. So here it says text for this plugin. So I've selected text. Name and label is very similar to other questions you would add in the form. You basically add whatever your interest, whatever you want to call it. And then the rest of how to configure field plugin happens in appearing. So first you add a prefix called custom hyphen, and then you add the name of the plugin you want to embed, and then you add parentheses. And inside this parenthesis is what is known as parameters. Now, any of these repositories that you see here will have a README file which will explain what parameters are required. In our case, these are the 5 parameters that are mandatory, and there are a lot of optional parameters as well. So the way you add it is basically you type in the parameter, you put it in an equal to, and then maybe you hard code it. For security reasons, I did not add actually API key, but this is basically how you would add it. You can, you don't have to actually output it. You can always use another field as well. So in this case, I'm basically calling nominee foo, which is another field right here, and that gets populated into it. That is it. Once you have done this, you basically upload it onto SurveyCTO. After uploading the form, you have to also upload the plugin as well. The way you do it is basically similar to how you would upload different attachments to a plugin. You basically click on attach file, and the zip file that we saw a minute earlier there, you basically attach it here, and then you publish it. That is it. So I'll also show you how this exactly works. The point is, we want that data to reach this platform. So earlier we were mentioning Telerevert. This is the Telerevert platform. This is contacts. Anything that goes through that plugin would ideally end up here. So the point of that plugin is to add something here. I'll also show you how the plugin works in action. I'll briefly stop sharing. So this is SurveyCTO Collect tab. I hope all of us are familiar with it. So I'll open the form. This is the form that we just uploaded. I'll open it. And so the point here was, as I was saying earlier, we want to add a ambassador to Telerevert and just adding a dummy data. So these are different parameters that was there, that some of them were optional, some of them were mandatory. I have added few parameters there, which I'm just filling. This is the plugin view. So this is the plugin that we have created. Now you see it has want to add this contacted delivered. So the survey officer has the liberty to choose, does he actually want to add the person into delivered or not. There is yes or no. I click yes, and then I just click on add delivered button. What basically happened was that plugin called the Telerevert API and moved all the data that I just filled into Telerevert. Now I just save this and share my earlier screen again. So this was a very brief demo of how the plugin works. Hopefully I have managed to explain how a plugin works. So most of the information would be found in the README file of any of the plugins, and there is SurveyCTO AI as well, which I've been using quite a lot lately. You could just go onto the platform and start questioning it. We'll probably guide the rest of the day.
Everyone, we just went through the two challenges that Suvita encountered and addressed. One of the challenges was figuring out how to use the existing resources that they found around SMS field plugins and adjusting it to fit their needs. And the first was realizing that perhaps for their specific situations, APIs were not as a good a fit of a solution for data flow as webhooks are. And like we mentioned, Suvita created a lot of resources that they wanted to share with you all to help you figure out how to kind of use their instructions for your own purposes. And that's what we've linked here. That's what we'll share out afterwards.